Hello and welcome to Centercode's webinar, Slaying the Monsters of Beta Testing. We really appreciate you joining us today, and we appreciate your time. I'm your host, Kelsey Tofik, and while folks are still joining the webinar, I'm going to cover a few housekeeping details. This webinar is being recorded, and we'll be sending out links to the recording in the slide deck afterwards. This webinar should last between 30 and 45 minutes with time at the end for Q&A. During the webinar, please send your questions to me using the Zoom dashboard. I'll collect them and we'll do the Q&A at the end. A few announcements from Centercode. If you're new to Centercode or curious about our platform, I encourage you to check out our website and edition guide, as well as our free beta edition, which includes everything you need to run a beta test. You can sign up and get started by going to signup.centercode.com or by scanning that QR code on the screen. We also have a Discord community where you can collaborate with others in our wider industry and get advice, work together, and share experiences. We're always looking for more professionals to join, so head to centercode.com/community or scan this QR code to become a member. Finally, I encourage you to check out the Delta Huddle podcast, Centercode's monthly podcast, where we chat with industry leaders about user testing, product development, and more. And lastly, for those of you who don't know Centercode, Centercode is the leading platform for achieving your user testing goals with minimal resources to maximize results. Our platform automates the many aspects of user testing, like feedback collection, tester engagement, reporting, and more. Our customers use Centercode to engage with their users to gather insights in a variety of ways. Whether you're building a beta test, a customer advisory board, a dogfooding program, or conducting competitive research, Centercode's platform can manage and automate it. Now, I'd like to hand over the controls to Austin Meyer, product director and our resident monster slayer here at Centercode, to get us started. Hey, Austin.
Gotta unmute myself. Hey, Kelsey, thanks for having me, and welcome everybody. I hope you're in the mood for some Halloween-themed beta testing best practices. As Kelsey mentioned earlier, my name is Austin Meyer. I'm a product director here at Centercode. I've been at the company for 10 years as of a couple weeks ago, actually. I started in sales for a little bit. Then I ended up running some managed betas on the services team. I ended up running the managed services team and support teams for a little while. And now I'm a product director doing some program management and general support for the marketing team. Being part of the product team at Centercode, it's a really special thing for me because it means I get to interact with every other team at the company, and I get to participate in sort of nearly every stage of product development that we do here. So I'm always learning a lot. My brain is always fried by the end of the day. And a little bit about me personally. Halloween's always been a special season for me and my family. We love, Halloween movies, the fall colors, weather changing, monsters, all that kind of stuff. So today's webinar was a fun idea that I had that I thought might be fun to share with everybody here. By the way, in case you're not counting, there's only 40 days until Halloween, so get your costumes. So here's what the monster slaying crash course we're covering today is going to go through. We're going to start with a quick kind of context setting and a little bit about why we're here, what we're doing. Then we'll get through and enter the maze of monsters and hopefully make it out alive. And after that, we're going to cover what should be in your monster hunting kits. And then we'll end by answering some questions. And if you're new to beta testing, my hope is that this is a crash course in sort of what to watch out for in your beta tests and when you're testing with external audiences. And for those beta testing veterans among us, I hope this serves as a reminder of the potential horrors that could plague your project when you're not vigilant. So around this time in 2018, Centercode's services team was managing a total of 26 beta tests concurrently. That was and still is the record. The reason I bring that up is just to reinforce the fact that testing is pretty prevalent, kind of August through early October. Companies are preparing for the launch of their new products for the holiday season, hoping to capture those holiday sales. So I thought it was a good idea to go back to basics and refresh our memory about the most common challenges that occur in beta testing. And more importantly, how to avoid or overcome them. And that's going to be my goal today is to teach you or refresh your memory on some of the fundamentals of good beta testing in a seasonally appropriate way, of course. So monsters seemed like as it does. It seemed like a fun topic to me, given my love for kind of all things spooky. And in doing research for the webinar, I came across the definition of monster in the dictionary just out of curiosity. And the first couple definitions were what you'd expect, right? An animal of strange or terrifying shape, an animal or an animal or plant of abnormal form. And then there was one that said threatening force. And that seemed more appropriate for what we're talking about. You know, the challenges that frequently plague our beta tests that I'll be talking about today, they're a threatening force. They threaten our success. And if they're ignored and left to fester and take root, these challenges, these monsters of beta testing will devour your test, and the consequences can reach far beyond your product's launch. And these consequences can include something like feedback slipping through the cracks, but that could also be, you know, bad or incomplete data. Maybe that bad or incomplete data leads to some misguided product decisions. Maybe that leads to a bad product launch. Maybe that leads to, you know, negative reviews and word of mouth, resulting in, you know, poor sales, and in some catastrophic situations, you know, potentially brand or reputation damage if the product release was as catastrophic as it might sound. So needless to say, it's really important to get beta right. So how do we make sure that we do that? We do that by learning to recognize and avoid these monsters in the first place. I've got a quote here from Dracula by Bram Stoker. Professor Van Helsing says at one point, "The strength of the vampire is that people will not believe in him." And I thought that was interesting and applicable here, because it's important to acknowledge that there will be problems, that there are problems and challenges in everything that we do. But, you know, in this case, we're talking about beta testing. And you may be not experiencing every single one, but, you know, most of the time there's something that you're struggling with, right? And it's important to recognize these problems, name them, and also develop strategies to avoid them altogether. Just like in real life, you know, the more you ignore or deny a problem, the stronger or worse it's going to get. So if any of you are familiar with, you know, Halloween events, theme parks and things like that, you'll know that they sometimes refer to their haunted house walkthroughs as mazes. I'm a big fan of those. So it seemed like an appropriate analogy to use for this little webinar here. And as we journey through this maze, I want you to remember that each of these challenges that we're going to talk about they're successive, and they build on each other. So if you can't really, if you're struggling with that first challenge, if you can't defeat that first monster or solve the first problem, you're not even going to reach the second one, and so on. It's sort of, again, successive, and they build upon each other. So let's head into the maze, shall we? Upon entering the maze, we're first confronted with the goalless ghost, and the goalless ghost targets the design and scoping for your project. There's a couple ways to know if you're being haunted by the specter, and that includes, you know, tests that go on indefinitely, disengaged testers and low activity completion, stakeholders with unrealistic expectations. You know, they're expecting things that were never discussed, or things that are just outrageous for, you know, given your capabilities or your time, and maybe a lack of expected results. You know, you're not getting the feedback or the insights that you expected at the end of the test. And to avoid the ghost altogether, you know, to stay out of his way, you can do a few things, right? You can set specific objectives. In other words, you know, knowing what an endpoint is for your test, knowing how you'll know when you're done, and how you'll measure success when you get there. Expectations should be set properly with stakeholders and testers alike. You know, everybody wants to know what to expect and what's expected of them. They don't want to feel like they're in the dark. And this is a key point that I really want to hammer home. I'm very passionate about setting expectations properly. You know, surprises are not, I'm not a fan of surprises. I've told my family, like, I'll disown you if you ever throw me a surprise party. So expectation setting and knowing what's coming is very important to me. Templates, which you'll hear me say a lot in this, in the rest of this presentation here. Templates are an incredible way to ensure that you're consistent and that you're relying on best practices that are prevalent in the industry, right? So, you know, having a test plan template in this example, it's going to ensure that you kind of already know what information you need from your stakeholders when you need to start a test. And so you're able to get that done much quicker. You're able to get that necessary information rapidly. And lastly, verifying that the product is beta test ready is another strategy there to avoid that ghost. You know, you should have all of your critical and showstopper issues, you know, taken care of, removed, And then all the major features that are in your product, that are advertised in your product, should be functional. Otherwise, really, at the end of the day, you're just going to be running a really crappy alpha test, and that's not fun because that data is not really going to be useful for you outside of maybe a couple of bugs that were found. And so when it comes to actually fighting off the goalless ghost, some tools you should have in your monster slaying kit for that purpose. You want something, you want a tool that will help you with test planning, right? You want test planning functionality for organization purposes, for centralization purposes. Keeping all that information, the test plan, and everything else about the test in one place is going to be really important and really help you move forward in your testing process. You want schedule automation as well. That's going to help you build out an ideal schedule, making sure that all of the necessary features get tested. It's also going to save you some time and some headaches of trying to get the schedule to work out with everything you have going on. And lastly, there are project KPIs, things like measuring health, the success of the project or the product, the impact that you're having. Those all provide measurements for success at the end point of your project. And they also serve as benchmarks for future projects, so you can continue to improve your processes. So we've vanquished the goalless ghost, and as we move further into the maze, we start to be silently stalked by the vampire of vanishing vigor. And the vampire of vanishing vigor targets your ability to allocate qualified resources to your tests. And some signs that your resources have been sapped by this vampire: you've got a general lack of communication about the test, so nobody really knows what's going on. No one has the full story. You're not even sure if somebody's actually paying attention to the feedback. Bad signs, right? And then also you're doing a beta test from scratch every time. You're reinventing the wheel. It's taking longer every time you run a beta test. You're basically starting from zero, and that's not ideal, obviously. And then testers, another sign that you have this vampire kind of hanging off your back. Testers are angry that they don't have proper support. They feel like their feedback is going into a void, feels like they're shouting into a void. They're questioning why they're even participating in the first place because they don't feel valued. And then another one, poor written feedback, right? If your feedback sucks and the feedback is unactionable, you can't do anything with it. Maybe it's piecemeal, maybe it's incomplete. Essentially the results aren't valuable or useful. And so that's another sign that this vampire has sapped your resources. And lastly, there are product launches that are chaotic and lackluster. That's another sign here. Launches with bugs in the product, usability issues in the product. Maybe they were all identified in beta, maybe they weren't, but nobody was able to take action because nobody distributed that information. You had no qualified resources to do anything with that information. So to avoid the vampire altogether, avoid the hypnosis and the bite on the neck, if you will, start with meticulous planning. That's going to help ensure that nothing about the test is in question. You have all the details and you stay in step with your product team. Next, kind of similar to planning, you want strategic scheduling of the project so that you can align it with the available qualified resources that you do have. And again, following that same line of thought, you want to make sure that you're aligned with the dev team and their sprint schedules, so that'll help to let you know when to anticipate and start preparing for the beta. And then another great sort of strategy and place you can go for help is peer communities, right? So Centercode has the beta and delta community that we run on Discord. We'd love for you to join, as Kelsey mentioned earlier. But that's a place you can go to ask for advice, get best practices and other resources in cases where you find yourself with a lack of qualified resources to, run your project. You can kind of find out some ways around that or whatever it might be, best practices. And lastly, there again, templates, right? They're going to reduce the resource requirements in the project. They save time. They make it easier for anybody or somebody without knowledge of beta testing really to deliver the same kind of results, hopefully that you're used to and that come in your tests regularly. They can be consistent results and you'll be able to compare them with previous tests. They won't be sort of this strange outlier. And so some tools that you'll want to have in your kit to fight this vampire with next to the stakes, you'll want to have beta testing software tools of some kind. So something like Centercode. If you're not using Centercode, something else, but it should be able to organize your project. You want to make it a central place for your project and everything about your project. It should simplify the workflows and everything like that that goes into submitting feedback and so on. It's just a huge time saver and effort, increases efficiency. Industry resources are another tool here. We kind of talked a little bit about that just a moment ago, but templates, guides, research, anything you can find would be good to have sort of in your kit to be able to avoid this problem of not having enough resources. And the next one there, a similar line of thought, the peer communities, joining those as often as you can and participating and learning from them is another huge tool and beneficial tool. Best practices coming from those peer communities and those industry resources, those are going to help ensure consistency, efficiency, make sure you're not reinventing the wheel every single time. And then training, and this one's a little weird, a little bit different, just because you need the actual person to be able to train them. But as time permits, training people on beta testing and how to run beta tests for you or for your company, it's going to help them help turn those unqualified resources into qualified resources that you can rely on in the future. All right, so we've vanquished the vampire now and the ghost. So you realize as we're continuing through the maze, you realize with dread that the werewolf of wasteful recruitment is crouched around the next corner, ready to pounce. And as we confront this werewolf, we know that it targets your tester recruitment efforts. And some of the warning signs that this werewolf is present in your project are disengaged testers. So if you have testers that are checked out and just straight up unresponsive, that's a good sign that your recruitment didn't go as well as you'd hoped. Feedback that's lacking substance and actionable information, getting feedback like, I don't like it, or it works well, or change this color, stuff that just isn't helpful, not actionable. You can't do anything about it without additional detail or digging in further. A heavy increase in support requests is another sign here that that your recruitment didn't quite match up with maybe what you had hoped it would. That probably means that either testers weren't the right fit, or the product is more complicated than you had anticipated. There's a lot of things that could go into that. But then also objectives that aren't being met is another sign. One or more features maybe not receiving enough feedback, or the feedback that is coming in isn't clear enough, not detailed enough. You're not able to draw insights from that and actually take action. And so, again, barring those warning signs, some ways that you can avoid being mauled by the werewolf. You can ensure that you're recruiting from your target market, which is a huge thing, right? Hopefully that's been well defined during planning, including tester. You want to make sure you're including ideas like testers' technical skill level. So, for example, if your product is designed for soccer moms in New York, probably not a good idea to include a grant writer from LA who builds his own gaming computers. They're just very different markets. Unless there's some weird Venn diagram where they cross, which I'm sure there is. But for the sake of the example, we'll leave it at that. Recruiting from a variety of sources is also another a good strategy. You want to make sure that you have different sources and varied sources like customer lists, social media, tester communities, word of mouth referrals, whatever it is. You want to have backups upon backups to make sure that you're able to get a diverse perspective and a recruitment pool that you can pick the best from. You don't want to just be stuck with the first 50 that signed up because those are the only 50 that signed up, or whatever it might be. When defining your ideal tester, you want to be sure to include demographic and technographic segmentations. So that means, maybe dividing people up by age or whatever it might be on the demographic side, and then dividing people up by the technology, the technographics that they have in their life, the technology they have in their life. And that will help give additional dimension, that's the word I was trying to find. It will add additional dimension to your results analysis, and it also helps to keep testers organized as well in your project, so you kind of have these discrete groups. Lastly, or second to lastly, I should say, keeping track of testers' performance on previous projects is going to add another layer of data to rely on when you're selecting your testers for your project. It's going to help you weed out any of those testers that didn't participate, won't participate, aren't a fit, whatever it might be, you're able to kind of weed those testers out with this performance tracking as you go through your program. And lastly here, agreements like NDAs and expectation agreements with testers provide legitimacy to your test. They make your test feel more official. It reinforces the seriousness of your efforts, and you can remind testers about the confidentiality during the test. So it serves as another a good way to set expectations there as well. Quick story here on recruitment and why recruitment and defining your target market is really important. We were working with a mobile device manufacturer. They were hoping to fill a niche left by BlackBerry when they pulled out of hardware. So we were testing a device that had a physical keyboard. And the recruitment criteria included, people who are on their phones, a lot for work, but have also used flip phones or budget devices historically, a few other demographic details that aren't relevant here. But do you know what was missing? And I'll see if you guys can catch on here very quickly. So the overwhelming prevalent feedback coming out of this test was focused on testers suggesting they ditched the physical keyboard. They didn't like the physical keyboard. Just they didn't understand why that existed anymore. So they forgot to include prefers a physical keyboard to on-screen keyboard as a recruitment criteria. So, silly mistakes like that can lead to this whole test basically being useless because we didn't recruit from the right target market. Those people didn't even want the product to begin with. And so all the feedback we got doesn't really do us a whole lot of good because it didn't come from the people we're targeting with the product. So tools to use in your kit as silver bullets for this werewolf: landing pages. So you want to have recruitment landing pages where you can properly set expectations. You can provide information so that testers can self-select if they don't fit the ideal tester profile. You want surveys to be able to assess testers' fit for the test based on documented requirements, based on those target market requirements that we were talking about. It becomes an opportunity to qualify the testers. You want to make sure that you're selecting ideal testers and being deliberate about the tester selection. You don't want to just take the first 50 people that join. You want to be able to have a big enough pool to select who the best, the people that best fit your desired sort of tester persona. Address and phone verification is another tool that you want to make sure you have in your tool set or your beta testing tool. That's going to help you ensure that people that you do pick are real people and that they can participate and follow directions. And then serve agreements digitally is another thing. Digital agreements, being able to be hosted in a platform and served to testers easily as part of the test will help things move more smoothly. You'll avoid the back and forth of like PDFs and scanning and then sending an email and then, oh, it didn't scan right and all that kind of stuff. Those digital agreements being available is very helpful, and it will keep testers reminded of their confidentiality requirements because they can be accessed regularly and they're kind of in their face all the time, especially if you have them available in your testing tool. All right, so we've knocked out the werewolf. The next hulking beast that we're going to encounter in this beta test maze is Frankenstein's Fickle Fiend. And this fiend targets persistent user engagement. And some of the signs that'll let you know that the fiend is sort of around the corner or in your project. You have testers who are slow to respond or unresponsive. You don't have enough feedback being submitted, even though you have a full team of testers, even though you have a good group of testers. Your feedback that is being submitted, maybe it's poorly written, it's unactionable. And then also kind of as you're keeping track of product usage during the beta, you notice that it's abnormally low. And so you notice that people have kind of checked out. And there's a couple strategies that'll help you dodge this monster. And we'll start with recruiting from your target market testers. We talked about that just previously. That's another key thing here to make sure that you're able to maintain persistent user engagement. You want to make sure that they're interested in the product and also the problems that you're trying to solve with it. Otherwise, they're not quite part of the target market there. Giving testers the resources to know what to test and how to test in a clear and easily understandable way is also going to make them feel like they know what to do next. So very clearly laying out how to test, what to test, and all that kind of stuff. Keeping the test top of mind for testers is another strategy here to dodge Frankenstein's monster. You want to send regular email reminders, letting testers know, hey, you're doing a good job, or if they're not completing what they need to complete, hey, don't forget, you've got this survey due a Sunday, or these activities due then, whatever it might be. And most importantly, team responsiveness and engagement, and that's from your team as the beta team. Testers tend to match the level of energy and engagement that you're showing in the test. And so the more you engage thoughtfully, the more you'll get out of your testers. And again, that one's super important. I'll talk about that one again in a second. I've got a quick little story for that. But first, let's quickly run through the tools that can help this fiend's advance, just like fire. So you're going to look for features in your tools like tester activities. So an ability to present some well-written activities to testers in a clear way. Maybe that's a to-do list, something like that can easily present that information and quickly. You want some engagement automation, some kind of automation to take the burden of managing engagement and keeping people aware of your test and all that kind of stuff off your plate. Maybe the automation sets up weekly activities, sends emails to testers to announce the activities for the week, sending reminders throughout the week to save to testers about, hey, don't forget you've got this one activity left to do. It's due Sunday, that kind of stuff. That's all going to shave several hours off your beta test workload. So again, that automation is really, really going to help in terms of resources and being able to accomplish what you need to accomplish. Content management, another way to kind of ensure that you have persistent user engagement, is the ability to present that product documentation and other relevant content to your testers, kind of get it in their face quickly, and being able to provide support and product knowledge through that documentation. Feedback collaboration is another one here. Giving testers the ability to collaborate with each other on feedback not only encourages that tester engagement, but it also helps with sort of lessening the support burden, because they're able to kind of support each other and help each other troubleshoot some of the issues they might be having. It'll help you manage duplicates, because testers will be less likely to submit duplicate feedback for what they've already seen in the test. And if they're able to engage in that feedback, there's no need for them to submit on their own. And then it contributes to feedback prioritization as well. All of those additional testers collaborating on that feedback, it's going to increase the sort of data behind that feedback. You're going to have lots more details to be able to use and be able to help with the feedback prioritization later on. Lastly, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, being most important, is really there's no replacement for good old-fashioned hard work in this case. And while it might be a challenge to respond to feedback on a regular basis with your testers, the benefit is going to be that you have happier testers who are better testers, and they provide better feedback because, again, they're excited about the product. They're excited that you're engaged in this test with them. And a few years ago, we had an opportunity to kind of test this idea. We had the same product, same demographics, and same product state. We split it into two tests, and we let the test managers run the tests. One of them had much higher engagement and feedback than the other. And when we dug into this data, we found out that one test manager was responding to testers' feedback, really quickly. It is almost immediately, and then in a really friendly way and unique, and it was giving thoughtful responses. The other one was the other test manager was providing what were essentially canned responses in bulk, and so quickly going through the feedback, quickly submitting the same message over and over, saying thanks for the feedback, and sort of repeating it. What we found out of that was that the engaged test manager, the one that was doing unique responses and things like that, received far more feedback and engagement in the comment section than the other. And so that was kind of where we verified our hypothesis, I guess, if you could say, and found that testers are matching the energy that they see from the test team. They're more likely to engage when that test team is engaged and excited. So now that we've addressed the challenges in project design and scoping, resource allocation, tester recruitment, persistent tester engagement, there's two monsters left in this maze. Both attempt to both attempt to attack your feedback. So the first of these feedback frights that blocks your path is the blob of bloating feedback. And I show this because it blows my mind, and I hope I'm going to ask how familiar this is to any of you. I'm hoping it's not many of you, if none of you. But this is kind of the idea here: is if you're not using the right tools, you're going to have a hard time managing all of the feedback and the engagement from your testers. And the blob of bloating feedback targets collection of relevant feedback. And so some of the signs that the blob is starting to absorb you, there are few, if any, actionable insights resulting from the feedback that you're collecting. The analysis of that feedback and going through all of that feedback, reporting those results is a huge time sink for you. If that email inbox there, going through each one of those pieces of feedback, putting it in a spreadsheet, analyzing all of that and doing all of that for reporting is a huge time sink. And then products release often to poor reviews from the target market. So something's not happening. We're not getting the right feedback to match this product and bring this product up to the requirements that the target market might have for it. So how can we avoid this blob of bloating feedback altogether? Specific feedback types and corresponding forms are going to help. They're going to ensure that the feedback that you do collect gets the relevant details, the things that you and your team need to process that feedback, and makes sure that it is categorized correctly. So you've got issues over here, ideas over here, praise over here. It's all separated, but all in the same platform, so that all of that data isn't siloed in a survey over here and your email over here, a spreadsheet over here, and Jira over here. It's all in one place, and you can kind of manage it collectively. Centralized testing is another way to help get actionable relevant feedback. So having a single place for all the feedback for everything about your test is ideal. It's going to avoid confusing testers on where they should provide feedback and how and what details to provide. You'll avoid a situation where you need to ask for more details and ask again, and then they get back to you with more, and then you have to ask again for more details. It's this sort of constant back and forth that you can avoid with both this sort of centralized testing and then specific feedback types and the corresponding forms with them that you're hopefully designing. And lastly, focused collaboration. So we've talked a little bit about collaboration already. When testers are able to collaborate on a single piece of feedback, like an issue, something like that, the feedback that may otherwise be lacking in details, maybe it starts fairly vague, might be lacking those details and the relevancy, it eventually gains that depth and the additional data points to ensure that it's valuable and relevant to the test with that collaboration. And so some actual tools to use to fend off this blob: dedicated feedback forms. We were already talking about feedback forms and making sure that they collect the details that you and your team need to process that feedback. It guides testers to submit good feedback because you're able to kind of train them on what information you're looking for and in what format. And it also eases your burden in analysis, right? So now you're not having to dig in for more details. All of the details that you need are there for you when you go to analyze the feedback. Tester collaboration, that'll add depth and details to increase the relevancy of that feedback with multiple contributors. We've talked about that. Feedback management. You want to have robust feedback management tools. Editing and responding to feedback is going to help you educate your testers, kind of a little bit like what we talked about earlier, educating your testers on what relevant feedback is. What does good feedback look like to you? And what are you expecting from your testers? And so that'll eventually make your job easier as you educate these testers over time. And if you bring those testers back for future tests, theoretically, they're going to remember, what you're expecting from that feedback, and they'll be able to give you good feedback on a regular basis. Lastly here, custom surveys, where feedback forms and traditional feedback tickets might fail, custom surveys is a great way to ensure that you're gathering kind of relevant feedback that's important to you in a format that's important to you, in a time frame that's important to you as well. All right, lastly here, we start to feel our sanity slipping away, and we are suddenly confronted with the Leviathan of lost priorities. And this Leviathan targets your feedback prioritization and distribution. And Some of the signs that the Leviathan is starting to take over your mind might be a lack of authority. So you're not able to be the smartest person in the room when it comes to your project and the product. Generally, that's the goal of beta testing, and what we try to do at Centercode for our customers is make them the smartest people in the room when it comes to the products, because they know about all the feedback, they know what the prioritized list of feedback looks like, and all of that. So without this good feedback prioritization, you're not going to be able to be that smartest person in the room. You're going to lack the knowledge to know what's most important, and not be able to tell anyone sort of where effort should be allocated first. And so that might contribute to this next one here, which is a lack of confidence in launch. And so the team in general really lacks a lot of the confidence that the product launch will be successful as a result of this sort of unprioritized, this massive blob of feedback that we were talking about previously. Maybe it's misprioritized, maybe it's not prioritized at all, and not being sure of kind of what items need to be fixed before launch can really kind of shake the whole team of like, okay, are we ready? Do we know that we're ready? Have we addressed the things that need to be addressed, and are the things that we're going to let go going to be things that our customers let go when it goes to launch and the bugs are still there? Which, speaking of, the next thing here, another sign that the Leviathan is invading your mind, is issues in the launched product. And so, maybe the product has bugs upon launch, and the support team's overwhelmed. Product returns are high, sales are down. All of that could be a sign that your prioritization is out of whack. And lastly, surprises in reviews. So if you're looking at customer reviews after the product's released, and you're starting to see some trends or themes that appear, but they weren't present in the feedback that was being submitted by testers and in your test, that's another sign that prioritization and distribution of those results is not quite right. So to guard against these, to guard your mind against this beast's attacks, you need to have prioritized areas of focus. So really what we mean by that is features and experiences in your product that you have prioritized yourself with your team. You know the importance of these features and the order of the importance of these features, and you're receiving feedback on a feature-by-feature basis as well. Or excuse me, you want to be able to receive feedback on a feature-by-feature basis as well. A consistent framework is another tool here, another strategy. Having best practices, established processes, a consistent way to organize the feedback for action, all of that. That's going to be critical for defending against this monster. Stakeholder and dev team alignment. So you want to make sure that your stakeholder team and your dev team agree on the priorities and the importance of these features. And if they do, you're going to be able to properly prioritize the feedback for analysis before it even gets to a room full of engineers and product team, and they then argue about what's most important. If we can get all of that done ahead of time, if we can have this alignment early on, the prioritization process is quick and easy, and everybody agrees on sort of what the priorities. Everybody agrees with the prioritized list of feedback because everybody had a say in it. And lastly, templates. Again, I don't think this is even the last time I'll mention templates, but templates for reporting and feedback, that's obviously going to save you time. It's going to save you sanity, all of that kind of stuff. Templates are huge for making sure you have the ability to prioritize and distribute your results quickly and efficiently. So some tools and weapons to have in your kit to fight against the Leviathan. You want your dashboards. You want some kind of quick way to understand information and feedback in your test. In the case of Centercode, we have something called the product success dashboard, which actually shows you your feedback in real time and sort of which one has the most impact and where you can place your efforts to get the most bang for your buck. So things like that will help provide your team with real-time information and feedback prioritization so that action, like I said, can be taken quickly without hesitation. KPIs, obviously important. They indicate where there might be problems that need to be investigated. So for example, if a product's overall success score is low, unexpectedly low, you can kind of dig in and find out which features are being received negatively, and then dig in further and examine the feedback that are related to those areas. And that way you can kind of prioritize what's important and what needs to be taken care of initially. Lastly, impact score. And impact score kind of feeds into these other two that we just talked about. What we mean by impact score is having some kind of objective system for prioritization. You don't necessarily have to use, Centercode's impact score, but some kind of formula for scoring the feedback or for prioritizing the feedback. It can be extremely helpful for taking swift action and saving countless hours. You're going to avoid, like we've been talking about, that back and forth in between product and engineering, arguing about what's priority, what's not. As long as everybody agrees early on, agrees on the system and the inputs in that system, then theoretically the output, the prioritized feedback list that comes out should fit everyone's expectations as well. So we did it. We defeated the monsters. We survived the maze. So to recap everything that we've learned here, I want to do a quick run through of kind of what should be in your monster slaying kit. So as far as tools go, here are the things that we should keep next to our stakes and silver bullets in our kit. We've got beta testing software, so something like Centercode, something built to manage these types of tests. You want to have a test plan template. That's going to save you time. It's going to increase your consistency, increase efficiency. Essentially, it becomes like an interview guide for stakeholders so that you can get the information you need. You want to have go-to sources for recruitments. They should be a diverse set of sources, and you want to make sure you have backups so that if anything happens, you can go to the next one. And if you've tapped out that one, go to the next one. Product distribution process. So you need to have something set up or understood as far as how you're going to distribute your product, whether that be hardware or software. In the case of hardware, maybe it's logistics with your warehouse, but in case of software, you want to make sure that you have TestFlight or Google Play beta set up and ready to go, so you're not having to spend time and waste that time during the test to learn that. Survey and feedback form templates is another tool you want to have in your kit. That's going to ensure you collect the information you need every time. And next, they're reporting templates. So again, templates are big theme here. Reporting templates will save you time. They'll make sure your reports are consistent so that you're able to compare across tests, across products, be able to benchmark and make continuous improvements in your processes. And lastly, this one we didn't talk about too much, but integrations. So integrating other tools that your team uses, whether that's Jira, Slack, or Teams. The product itself maybe has some capability to take feedback in. You want to make sure you integrate as much of those as possible with your beta testing tools, and that's going to make you stickier, and it's going to reduce the opportunity for human error. Like if you're copying and pasting issues from your tool or a spreadsheet into Jira, a lot of opportunity for human error there. And finally, quickly breeze through these ancient techniques, these best practices that we've talked about. Using the right tool for the job, so making sure you're using a tool designed for what we're trying to accomplish. Making sure to establish specific goals and endpoints, outcomes with your stakeholders, so everybody knows when the project's done. Considering technical skill level, you want to make sure you're thinking about those things when it comes to your recruitment, and not accidentally recruiting super technical people for something that is pretty basic, and vice versa. Those will cause some issues with your feedback. You want to make sure you're providing just enough detail in tester activities to let them to have them know what to do, but you don't want to give them a step-by-step process for that. You want to leave a little bit of room for exploration for your testers. Setting clear expectations for stakeholders and testers alike. I already harped on that one quite a bit. Engaging frequently with your testers to motivate them. This was another thing we talked quite a bit about. And making sure that your efforts are going to match what you want from your testers. So respect their time and give them some of your time as well. Setting up specific unique feedback types and accompanying forms. That's going to help keep your feedback organized, make it so that you can more easily analyze it, and make sure you collect the data that you need from your testers. And lastly, when we were just talking about establishing some common framework or formula for feedback prioritization, so that can be done quickly. It can be done without argument, and you can quickly take action. So I want to end here on a positive note. Another quote from Professor Van Helsing here. We learn from failure, not from success. So give yourself some grace. If you've been beaten back by any of these monsters, don't worry. We'll all live to fight another day, and you'll be smarter for it. So you'll be able to do better next time. So before we get into Q&A, if you have questions, make sure to submit them now. But Wanted to make a couple more announcements. Like Kelsey mentioned at the beginning, you can get started for free with Centercode at signup.centercode.com. We've got a QR code there as well. If you are interested in more resources and learning more about beta testing and everything about beta testing, we have a huge library of expert resources at centercode.com/resources. And then if you're interested in learning more about Centercode in general, feel free to schedule a demo. You'll talk with a product manager. We only have product managers on those calls, so you'll be able to kind of understand and discuss kind of your use cases and see how Centercode can work for you. All right, let's get into. Oh, actually, I have one more announcement. Sorry. We're also hosting a networking event on October 17th. We're kind of getting our events started again in person. This is going to be at the Centercode office in Laguna Hills in California. Customers and non-customers alike are welcome. We would love to have anybody who'd like to join us. Dinner's on us, and there'll be some raffles for some cool prizes. If you want to sign up, go to the QR, use the QR code, or when you get your this deck in your email in the next day or so, you can use the link here in the deck as well. All right, let's get to some Q&A. Kelsey, are there questions?
Yes, we have one question here from Marissa. It's, can you tell me if there are any plans to open up TED for customization? We love Centercode and the idea of TED is wonderful, but his tone does not always seem appropriate when your testers are other businesses, and all of his emails are from TED from Centercode, which may confuse our testers, as Centercode is not mentioned anywhere else on our account, and all their communication comes from one of our email address rather than Centercode.
That is a great question, and I am happy to say that some of the TED customization stuff, I don't have specific details on what that entails right now, but I do know that some of that customization options is actually going into beta, I think, this weekend. So if you're on our Go Early servers, you can sign up. If you're not, you can sign up to join those, and so you'll get those features kind of before everybody else, and you'll be able to give us feedback and things like that. So yes, those are coming. I don't have the details off the top of my head right now of what that actually is, what those customization options are, but some of them, maybe not all of them, are coming very quickly here. So that's exciting. It's been, and I completely agree with you, and that's one of the sort of core feedback we got about TED is sort of this B2B situation and what that looks like. So definitely hear you there, and we're definitely making headway there.
Awesome. That was the only question that we had. So thanks so much to Austin for his presentation, and thanks to all of you for joining us, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.